I chose to do web exercise number 6, which is child sex abuse. I chose this because this relates a lot to what I want to do in the future. Obviously, I said in other videos and everything that I do want to be a child psychologist, but my focus, and because I do want to go for my doctorate, hopefully, and my focus would definitely be on survivors of sexual abuse and just abuse in general in adolescence. So I thought this was a really good thing for me to explore. So the documentary Breaking the Silence, the first question was, what did you learn most from watching this documentary, which was actually a really, really sad documentary, by the way. If you actually did watch it, it's kind of heartbreaking to see. I learned most about it was like literally within the first, I think 10 minutes it was about the parent alienation syndrome, which was basically made up by a guy, and it said that whenever a mother claimed that she was getting battered by the father and then the child was also, then the courts would be like, no, this is her just alienating and everything. I'm sorry if you hear kids, I'm at my job right now. You're just alienating the father and you're just trying to get out of it. This was actually debunked by the American Psychological Association and multiple other scientific organizations. So that was really good that got debunked and everything. But also there's an issue still where the courts will take this and interpret this under the same light over and over again. Okay, a thing that stood out to me while watching Breaking the Silence, the documentary, is that 2/3 of fathers that are actually getting either sole or joint custody of the kids who are accused of battering and assaulting the kid. And I just thought that was crazy. And then they went into talking how a lot of this is societal view of this is that mothers are usually favored, but the statistic right here is showing that most of the time it's not that way. One of the questions was, why do you think someone would abuse a child? This is a really hard question. I definitely think this is why a lot of my psychologists and researchers exist, is to get to the main root of this question, which I don't know if we ever will get to a reasonable answer for abusing their own child. But some of the things that I learned through this documentary, and I've known for quite a while studying psychology, going into my junior year studying psychology, is that they have a lack of control and power in their lives, or they're not looked at as a powerhouse in their life, and they want that power and they take it out on their kids because they can have that power and that control to decide, obviously, to abuse their kids or not. And in a lot of the sexual cases, you can see if they do have sexual frustration with their adult partner, or they're going through divorce or loss of job or a very, very stressful event, this can also happen as well. And then this can also be that they feel a lack of control or power in their relationships with adults as well. Another one of the questions said, what resources or programs are there for children who've been victim of sexual assault? And actually, I was watching a documentary, but I had known of, actually, it's called Helping Children. It's based out of Maine, and I've heard about this. It's actually pretty famous of what they do and stuff like that. They provide local and state communities in Maine. Sadly, it's only in Maine, but this is a super cool program, and they do evidence-based learning, and I think it's really cool because they find the evidence, and they do believe the kid always first, obviously, and everything, and they have really important skills, and they teach kids skills to identify in adults that in situations if this would happen again, and it teaches them how to move on past this. I think that's the main thing a lot of these programs are trying to hit home with, is having the kid try to move on from this. It's not exactly move on, but helping them move along their path with, obviously this is always going to be a part of them, sadly, but it gives them resources and tools to move on from this, which I thought was a really cool program, and I've known about for a while studying this area. And then also, another one is Straight Talk about child sexual abuse, a prevention guide for parents, which is just it's not exactly a program, it's a book, and it's an article about how parents can get involved with the healing process. If one of the parents, say, wasn't involved in this sexual abuse, it helps the parents help the victim, and I think this is a really cool program, because I don't know if parents can really learn about how what their kid went through if the parent themselves did not go through that. So it helps the parent understand first. So I think that's a really good outlet that the kid can build trust with their parents again, obviously, because I feel like there is a destruction of trust with all adults if the child has been sexually assaulted by an adult. So yeah, those are two really good programs in the book, basically. So I thought those was a really cool ways on how kids can start to heal from this traumatizing event. So the last question that was on the thing was, how do you give, or what advice do you give with somebody that suspects their child is getting sexually abused? My personal thing would be, you really need to get involved and you really need to believe your kid, because obviously there's a huge thing where some parents don't believe their kid and they're like, oh, they're just out, like they're just acting out and stuff like that. I would say my personal belief is always believe the kid first, because obviously if they are voicing something even if that doesn't turn out to be true, there is something else wrong in the kid's life, trying to get attention that way. The next thing is, I do think that kids who have been sexually assaulted do go through the 5 stages of grief. I think that you have denial. I think you have all the stages, anger about that. And I know you're saying, you're not losing somebody, but that kid potentially did lose his innocence in that process. So I think that the parents need to understand that they are going to go through those stages and they're going to be so angry, and then they're going to be so sad, and they're just going to be confused, and they're going to be like, no, it didn't happen anymore. So I definitely think that you're going to see those stages come, and then they will finally be ready to talk at some point. I think some parents can think they're not talking to me about it, so maybe they don't want to talk about it. I think ignorance is not bliss at all in this situation. I don't think that quote has, honestly, being a psychologist, I don't think ignorance is bliss is ever a good thing in any traumatizing situation that can totally rewire your brain, basically, as a kid. So my advice would really be is to listen to your kid and find the evidence you need, and definitely take legal action if there needs to be. Well, there always needs to be if they are being sexually assaulted, but if need be, whatever is comfortable for the family as well. I think definitely just understanding your kid and taking your kid to a psychologist or a therapist that is understanding and very client-based and very client-led, I think is super important, because I don't know if any other therapy would be, in my personal opinion, studying psychology, I don't think therapist-led psychology would benefit a kid as much as client-led would be, in them taking into their own words what has happened and what do they think they need to do next for healing from this process. Of course, I skipped a question on accident, and the one question I skipped on accident was, how did being abused affect the people in this documentary? So I saw a very bit of a mix on how it affected some people. So it affected some people in the way that they had a lot of anger, and I saw a lot of anger in some of them, and then some of them had issues creating intimate relationships with an adult and didn't want to be touched and couldn't, like, honestly be touched and physically touched by, even when they were in a trusting relationship. So it kind of just tore apart, how they literally see relationships, which is actually really sad and really heartbreaking. But obviously this is a reality, and it's something you need to talk about, and this is something I want to study. So, and then you see the type of people that really moved on from this and grew from it and became a better person from it, which is really hard to do. But it was a lot of, honestly, mixed people in the documentary talking about it. So I think it depends person to person. That's obviously why psychology is a field, because if everybody was exactly the same, we would be out of the job, and I wouldn't have a job waiting for me, hopefully, after college. So it was all very different and very sad seeing how people reacted to being sexually assaulted. So